When a story is very familiar, and in this case, when you have the lineage that as Anatol was saying, had the original animated Disney movie have its opening here 65 years ago, we constantly hear references to Cinderella stories. This title is referred to in the discussion of other narratives so often. It starts the process of making you wonder exactly why that is the case. Why does it hang on? What is the glue that keeps it in our consciousness? And that was the process of working on the film. That was what was exciting about it. So across various conversations, I remember the first conversation with Cate, we talked about that, but we also remember you saying that you were very interested in it as a sidebar, as a part of that, cruelty between women was something that you brought up as a subject. Helly was talking about the idea of people not necessarily being as good at magic as they might pretend they are, and that there might be some fun to be had of that, so it needn't quite be so smooth. And then with Lily and Richard, this idea of trying to make the prince a sort of a charismatic complement to Cinderella, necessary, someone who earns the right to her affection, and where both meet not knowing who the other is and on equal terms, that all of these things could are part of what kept it interesting, that it was somehow welded to this story that we still seem interested in, where we want to identify with her, we want things to work out, we're very cynical about happy ever after endings in life, and yet we wish to be inspired. And so how would we find that in a Cinderella story here and now? Well, it had to come from the inside out, and for a situation where if circumstances can't change, people live in cruel or deprived circumstances, maybe internally there can be a change, there can be a victory of the spirit. All of this stuff sounds very highfalutin, but in Cinderella, it's possible that the myth has hung around across every culture, across thousands of years, because it is flexible and adaptable to the time in which it's presented, and this is how we started with ours here.
For me, the biggest challenge really was to live up to the expectations of Cinderella, and not disappoint every 6-year-old in the world, and do something that didn't work. It's a costume designer's dream. Basically, the story is a costume designer's dream. You get to do the good, kind princess, the handsome prince, and then the baddies. And the baddies really are the best fun. I mean, it's all good fun, but it's always great to do the baddies. Yeah.
Sorry. Well, I mean, obviously, they kind of do pretty much all that acting sometimes for you. They're so magical, and you put them on and suddenly you stand different and you feel different, and it's all part of that magic. But they were quite painful. The corset was incredibly tight. It was funny when we were doing it together, because we had to have our own tents because both our dresses were so big. We couldn't
actually. We had about 4 feet between us. I mean, we're about 8 feet. Well, since we're about 4 feet wide, each of us, we couldn't actually get close. And when the logistics of going to the ladies was you couldn't locate the toilet because you just...
Yeah.
I mean, Sandy is a genius, but the comfort wasn't necessarily high up on the priority list. And then added to which we would, of course, we were at night because the fairy godmother arrives at night. I hadn't really thought about that. You don't think about that when you read the script. And it was a night shoot outside, so we were quite cold. But my dress was an extraordinary creation. I've never worn anything like it, and I don't think I hope to ever wear anything like it again. Just because I was a walking lamp. I had 4,000 LED lights inside, so I had about a 15-pound battery pack in my bum, and there was a lovely young man, Belgium, he came all the way from Belgium, who works for Philips, and he'd come and turn me on every... And then he'd come out, and we'd start shooting.
Look, certainly when you get to play someone who has wicked in front of her name, it's you know it's going to be slightly fun. But I was too old for Cinderella, so and not funny enough for the godmother, and so I got what was left over. No, definitely. It always is, because you, in a way, you can dare yourself to see how far you can stretch it. The boundaries are not as marked. You're not worrying about whether people like you or not. and people want the villain to be bad and do extreme things. So doing extreme things is sort of part of our remit as actors. So yeah, definitely.
Question to Kenneth. I heard really great things about your... you're very good when you explore the dark side of human nature, and I heard really great things about Macbeth, which you made on theater, and... No, sorry, the Scottish play. When are you going to do the Scottish play as a film? And would you choose Cate or would you choose Helena as Lady Macbeth?
Well, talking of impossible questions, obviously it would be a glorious opportunity in either case.
Siamese twins.
Yeah. It's so.
Kate could play Lady Macbeth and I'll play the Missus, or we can swap.
We could swap, night on, night off. See who's better.
Yeah.
An all-girls version.
Yeah.
Or,
And then we'll take a vote.
Right here. Can I just ask a question? Cate Blanchett from Australia.
yes. Yes. Would I have seen you in anything?
No.
Okay.
I love your work, though.
Thank you very much. That's very kind. Okay.
This is a question for Mr. Brannagh.
So speak up. I can't hear you, please.
Whose idea was it to have? Because when you were talking about the ballroom, all of those chandeliers, they were all candlelit, weren't they?
That's
I mean,
right.
how many candles were there, Mr. Brannagh, and how long did they take to light?
Well, actually, we had a candle philosophy, didn't we, David? Do you want to talk about candles?
Candle philosophy.
Yeah, there were about 2,500 candles in the candelabra. They weren't proper candles. They were wicks dipped in oil, floating in oil, that burnt for about 8 hours at a time. And we had to be able to change every one of them within about 20 minutes. Otherwise, we'd have been dead in the shooting day. So it was a real feat of planning
And that candle design, to answer your question, it was because we knew that to get them up, get them down, and light real candles, we couldn't do it. A candle had to be designed that was a candle with a real flame, but that was oil-based, as David said, so that it burnt over 8 hours, not over half an hour. Otherwise, we'd
And
never...
do you buy these at Disney stores now?
Yeah, it's part of the merchandising
Another
thing.
manufacturer.
What colours would you like them in? I have some in my bag.